Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our reading sprint, kicking off our Demons by Dostoevsky read along. I am Kate, if you don't know. I think most people here know us all. Just as a preface, for those that are worried because they haven't started this yet, we are breaking this into 3 months long. It's read at your own pace. We're kind of aiming for one part per month, for part one in December, January, and February. But you can read at your own pace. I think Una and Christy have already started and are absolutely loving it from what I've heard. So let's just go around our group and say hello. Give a quick intro. Christy, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, and I'm thrilled to be reading a Dostoevsky with this group. We tend to read him around winter, December, Christmas time. And thank you for joining us.
Tiffany?
I'm Tiffany. My channel name is Beautiful Minutia, and I have been waiting all year to read this book. I got it for Christmas last year, and I'm so excited.
All right. I am Una from the Codex Cantina, and I am also equally excited to read this. This is his last of depending on who you talk to, like the big 4 or big 5 works of his. This is the last one that I haven't read. So I'm super excited to kind of start seeing how the connections build with his thought processes and all the themes in these books.
Nice. I'm Stephanie, and Lucy is here too, if you hear purring. And I have owned this book for like 15 years and have not read it. So I've also been very much looking forward to it. I'm very excited.
Does that mean it's all of our first times reading this? This is no one's second lap?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's a first.
Yes.
And later we'll be joined by Victoria, who's feeding the baby right now. One of the things that I love about Dostoevsky's books is, depending on the translation and the edition that you have, you get all of these different covers. Like every book is different. So Stephanie has that one.
I have the Possessed.
Yeah, you also get different titles depending on who's translating into what. And mine has like this guy that looks like Johnny Depp.
That's like a Tim Burton,
right?
Dostoevsky cover.
It
I like it.
Of like Edward Scissorhands.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Wow.
And it has a quote from Nietzsche on the front.
Yours is the Barnes and Noble one, isn't it, Stephanie?
Yeah, mine is the Garnet edition or translation.
I love her.
So, I'm pumped.
Does anyone know there's allegedly some chapter that is cut from some editions, like whether you're reading the Possessed or Devils or translation, that I guess was pretty graphic for the time, but I guess gives you like a lot of background on one of the characters. Do we know which versions have it built in versus which ones have it like at the end of the book? Like, do we have any congruency on what our plan is there?
So mine is the Pavir Volokonsky version, and it is in the back of the book because I was flipping through it. So mine, it's in there, but it's not just included.
Okay, mine might not. Do you know the title of it?
It's At Tikhon's, which is part 2, chapter 9.
Okay.
Which mine, I think, has part of that chapter, but maybe not all of it. Or maybe it doesn't have it at all. Let me look and see.
I don't think mine has it. Interesting.
So that might be something that we need to figure out, for those that aren't having that included in their book, where could they go potentially grab it? I'm sure there's like a link on like Gutenberg or something, but my understanding is it was cut because of it being pretty intense, but it really explains one of the characters. So
Victoria.
Hi.
Definitely find it and then share it like on the Discord.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good idea. I don't know, but I feel like this Gutenberg copy has it. It has it listed at part 2, chapter 9, that it's like straight in the book and not at the back. But I'm not sure. Maybe the numbers might be different. So I don't know.
What's the
Yeah,
chapter
mine
title?
lists part 2 chapter.
My
No.
chapter title is A Raid at Stepan Trofimovich's.
Yeah, see, that's the
That's
alternate
mine.
chapter, I think, because that's what mine has in the table of contents. But then the appendix has a different original chapter 9.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Yes. What did you say, Kate?
How's the baby?
Oh, he's good. He's just doing his baby thing.
Una, how's your snack?
It's really good, actually. My son and I give it 2 thumbs up. It's Pandoro. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's an Italian Christmas butter cake, I guess is what it's called.
Yum.
Recommended to me from Tom at LA Books. But I really like it. My wife, she said she couldn't detect like what the flavor was, but it wasn't gelling with her, whatever it was. We read the ingredients. There wasn't anything crazy different about the ingredients, so I'm not really sure what it was, but it didn't work for her. We were planning on buying this small little like 1 pound, personal cake that, like me and my family of 3 here, we can share. But I didn't look at the sizing when ordering it, and I ordered a 2.5 pound one. So it came and it was like this huge box. So I went like and knocked on my neighbors, and I'm like, "Merry Christmas! Here's some cake." Like we can't eat all of this.
Caring is sharing.
Yes. That's always a good icebreaker with the neighbors.
Here's some random Italian cake.
Who's going to say no to that? No one.
Well, shall we get started reading?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
Wait, we should ask Victoria the question we passed around too, which is this your first time reading Demons as well, out of curiosity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And I don't know very much about this one going in really at all. But it's not my first Dostoevsky, so at least I do know, I'm familiar with his writing. It's now quite a bit more. So I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you were a part of like the 2009 Crime and Punishment read along, right? And then obviously you were one of the hosts of the 2020 Brothers K. So you definitely got some good background there.
2019, not 2009.
Did I say 9?
Like, wow.
She's a YouTuber. Yeah.
This is Tony's first.
Ooh. It's exciting.
It'll be interesting to see like how does this fit as like an introduction to Dostoevsky? Like
Yeah.
is it a good place to start? I don't know. Like it's
Yeah.
Brothers K was a good time.
Who here has how many of you have read Demons? No
None
one?
of us.
Are we all first time? Okay.
yeah. We can
Oh,
all
exciting.
struggle through it together.
Okay.
All I know is that it has Johnny Depp in it.
That's an amazing cover.
All right.
I want to watch that adaptation.
Okay, I'm sorry, really quick. So I was looking up that chapter on
Okay.
Gutenberg, and it says one of the translators for the one on Gutenberg is Virginia Woolf.
Whoa.
Really?
Oh, that's
And
cool.
apparently she spoke Russian.
I didn't know that.
That's wild.
I'm going to look further into this, but that just threw me for a loop. So I'll share. But anyway, moving
Thank
on.
you for sharing that.
That's really interesting.
Fascinating tidbit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, how long do we want to read for?
do 4 hours.
Just straight 4 hours.
Are we building naps into that?
Yes.
Una's got a snack. He's ready to go.
Right.
Una's just gonna read the entire book in one sprint.
And
That's
write
still fast
and
reading
do a
for
whole
4
video.
hours.
I'm actually going to be filming my video on it right now. So
If we see Una talking to himself, he's just talking to the camera.
Right.
I don't have a vote for how long. I'm just going to read until someone starts talking. I might take off my headphones, but
Is 30 minutes good?
Yeah.
I was curious too which edition Victoria has.
Oh yeah.
I'm reading an ebook, so it's whatever this edition is.
Wow.
That
I
is
don't know.
a fiery
At the top,
cover.
it says Digi Reads at the top, which is like, is it Digimon? Like, I don't know. Is it the Digimon edition?
Oh, I've seen those around. Yeah.
so
I'm not entirely sure.
I have the physical version of the PVR and Volhansky, just like Tiffany, but I actually have the audiobook of, was it the Michael Katz or something like that translation? So I'll read it first and then I'll go back and do an audiobook for a second pass through because I usually don't understand it on the first take. So
My translation is Constance Garnett. I don't know if anyone else has that. Stephanie, you do?
Team Garnet over here.
All right.
I actually have the Pavir and Volkansky ebook that I bought a long time ago, but I think I don't know. I want to try Constance Garnett again because I actually really liked her. It was just, yeah, a little harder, I think, for me to get through before.
I'll say this. I know we're trying to get started, but when I go back and listen to it a second time, I don't know if it's just the second pass, but there's for sure certain things that are translated very differently. I've noticed in the Katz version versus the PVR and Volhansky, where I'm like, that word choice, because I remember that word choice. I went and looked back and look it up. I'm like, that gives a much different connotation with the Katz version as opposed to PVR and Volhansky.
Interesting.
So
I know my version has a quote from Nietzsche on the front, and it says, Dostoevsky was the only psychologist from whom I had anything to learn.
mhm.
He belongs to the happiest windfalls of my life, happier even than the discovery of Stendhal.
Mm-hmm. And then proceeds to write everything like as the antithesis of Dostoevsky.
Okay. Okay. I tried to like come in gently so I don't scare everyone.
Yeah, that was not startling.
Okay, good.
So
Put my Christmas music off.
I found an audiobook version on LibriVox, and it almost looks like the possessed version of Animal Farm.
Oh my gosh.
But it's the Constant Garnett version, so it works for me.
Nice.
So how did everyone do?
I got a whole 2%, so like 19 pages.
Not bad.
I think I got 16 pages. Yeah.
I'm trying to look through I'm trying to make sure. So the narration that I have is George Guidall, but I think it's Cats is the translation. I don't think it's the same version as the Garnett on LibriVox.
Yeah, this one, it says it doesn't have a name. It's just some username that it's read by from Bangor, Maine.
I was born in Bangor, Maine.
Small world.
Isn't that where like Stephen King's from or something around that area?
Yep, he is. That's where he lives.
I've been to that.
Did you run into Stephen King at the grocery store, Tiffany?
I mean, I moved away from there when I was like 5, but my mom did see him
Really?
like once or twice. Yeah, and she was a huge Stephen King fan. So
That's cool.
his house is really cool. It has like iron gates that like have like spiders and stuff in them in front of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely
would.
looks like what you think his house looks like.
Yes.
Yeah,
it
he
does.
would have.
It would be so funny if it was like the exact opposite though, like a daffodil yellow little townhouse, like the happiest little house ever, and you're like, that's where Stephen King lives.
Like you come around the corner to see it, and like the sun is dancing and singing. Yeah, I didn't keep track of how much percentage I read, but I finished the chapter that I was on remarkably right as we finished.
Nice.
Good timing.
I got about 3% in. I thought it was funny because I'm a person that reads like way more books at one time than I should. I've got like 5 or 6 books going right now. And two out of the books that I'm reading right now, my 2 digital books, both reference Gulliver's Travel and Jonathan Swift in it. I'm like, what are the chances that this like book that I grew up absolutely loving, it was like one of my first introductions to classics, and I was obsessed with it as a kid. I read it like 20 times. I read it so much that like my mom had to get me a new copy because it was all worn out.
Oh.
And now like 2 of the books that I'm currently reading, both in like the very beginning of the book, referenced it.
What's the other book?
The other book is called The Legend of Blackjack,
Mm.
which is a YA fantasy, and the main character, Blackjack, is a descendant of Jonathan Swift in the book.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They said he was like the great grandson or something, but he's not interested in literature at all.
Yeah. Mine also this referenced the Tower of Babel, and I'm planning on reading The Fall of Babel this month.
Yes.
It was like, it's just perfect timing.
Leslie!
Leslie. Also, Tiffany, I love that your husband is trolling in the chat.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
You like how he's like, I found the channel. Because he came in and he's like, who are you sprinting with? I'm like, a lot of people. He's like, whose channel is it on? I'm like, Kate's. He didn't know the title. He had to like really look.
Wow.
That's
Dedication.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's really, 100% committed to the trolling.
He
And
really is.
I can
I
admire
respect that. It's respectable.
that. Yeah.
Respectable.
I mean, that's troll dedication right
It
there.
is. Give him that.
I'm still cracking up how last time he was like, I think Mark is just playing Angry Birds
Yeah.
as he's reading.
And then they were dancing in the background.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't on camera, at least. That wasn't live. I told him, I was like, you guys gotta go. We're going live. And so then he goes on in the chat.
Tiffany gets ghosted and trolled by her husband on live shows all the time. So
Every time. Every time I have a live show on my channel. Every time.
Tradition.
It is.
I think on some level it's nice to know your significant other's interested in your hobbies.
Yeah. We'll go with that. Yeah, Matt.
Christy, how did you do?
I didn't get too much farther, but I'm reading a chapter that it keeps like referencing dates and movements and things, so I was doing some research on the side.
Which chapter are you in?
It's like it's part 9 of like the introductory chapter. And yeah, it's talking about, I think,
Serfdom.
Yeah, serfdom, yeah. And it's very funny.
Russia doesn't know how to live by its own labor.
There's already been a couple moments. I'm only in part 2 of the introductory chapter, but there was already a couple moments that I was like, yep, there's Dostoevsky's humor right there. This is why I'm here, folks.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's. Go ahead.
I think I was just gonna say, so far the whole thing has been very funny to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hysterical. I'm well known for loving Brothers Karamazov, right? It's like my favorite book, and the opening of that is hysterical too.
Oh.
This one catches me in a similar way of it just being great. So here's my expectations. If someone told me that this is like dark and political, so maybe it's going to go there. I don't know, but so far, and I was also warned it was going to be kind of slow in the beginning, but I'm like, I don't know. I really enjoy this beginning. I think it's funny. I think the characters are engaging. I'm really interested to see where it goes, because it's like, I feel like he's just constantly teasing me with information. Like, he's not giving me the full story. There's all these things happening in the background and these talks and secrets. And I'm just very intrigued to find out kind of like what happens next.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the melodrama already. Like, I shall never forgive you for this.
Yes.
How dare you embarrass me in front of my friends?
Yes.
Well, I love how like oblivious Stepan is too. Like, oh, well, Vavara, were you and I? Were we supposed to like?
Or
I always imagine like Dostoevsky would be a great like old Southern lady, because he's so good at writing the melodrama. He's like Russia's version of the old Southern lady that gossips on the front porch.
Like, oh, bless their little hearts.
Yes.
But did you hear what so-and-so did with so-and-so?
Yeah.
I feel like he views his characters with that sort of bless their hearts attitude.
Yeah.
Just like an idiot.
Yes.
Where it's always like all of his characters like have all these like dimensions to him, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
But then there's like that one character that's like super evil that like has like no redeeming quality.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not very far in. I'm only in like the 3rd section of the introduction, but I'm wondering who's speaking, like who's narrating, or are we not supposed to like really have a clear picture of that yet? I'm assuming.
I don't yet in part 9 of chapter 1.
Got it.
Asuna has like a Cheshire cat grin over there. Like, I know.
So cool. What's gonna happen? I love that you asked that question. There's I won't say anything, but like there's this part where you're going to get an answer to kind of that question that you're just like, whoa, Dostoevsky, what are you doing? Like it's kind of like when you read Brothers Karamazov like every now and then, like you're like in the story, and then all of a sudden, like you have this guy be like, "Oh yeah, in our town," and you're like, "Oh, I totally forgot you were here, Mr. Narrator." Like,
Right.
he does something very interesting with the narration that I think is really cool. So you'll come upon it soon enough.
Okay. Good
Yay.
to know.
Glad it wasn't just me too. It looks like a bunch of people in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
I feel like we all know someone like that too.
I just,
Stephanie
It's
was
created
the
with
one who did.
love because I feel like Dostoevsky was very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's always so interesting to me in the beginning parts here of like, how do characters choose who to spend their time with?
Mm.
Like Stepan's so interesting the way that he chooses to spend times with this person, but not that person. I don't want to say too much, but it's not like the traditional method of like how most people choose to invest their time. So it's like, what's he saying with this? Like, why does it matter that Stepan is spending so much time with this person, but not that person? And that's
Especially like in Dostoevsky books, he always has so many characters
Mhm.
in each one of his books that I'm always like amazed that he's able to keep track of everyone and their storylines, and they always come like there's no loose ends at the end. He always ties them up, and I'm like, I get lost at who's who and who's supposed to be with who and whatnot, but Dostoevsky has a way to, have all of these different threads and these different characters going, and they all intermingle with each other at some point or another, and then they all come together at the end for one cohesive end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious if the characters are all going to be kind of standing for some kind of intellectual movement, because he often does that.
Right.
I always laugh. There's this one, Goodreads. You can either do stars or you can leave like a review, right? One person felt it was really important to leave a review. I think it was for it was some Jane Austen book, and he just said 1 star. All it is a bunch of people going to each other's houses and talking.
That's my favorite review ever.
I love that. I love 1-star reviews like that.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, like there's a good deal of truth to that.
There's totally like this string in this first part where they're just going to different people's houses, and I'm like, yeah, they're doing that thing.
Yes. And I did find a character list that I can share in the Discord.
Oh, awesome.
Is it that spoiler-free one?
Yes, but I will say, do not click the link for the updated character list
Okay.
on that spoiler-free one.
Uh-oh.
It is
You get spoiled, Stephanie.
I did,
Oh, sad.
but the list was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, character lists help, especially because so many people have multiple names.
Yeah.
And so having a character list with all their names really, really helps.
Yeah.
That was another thing I was doing while I was reading this first part. There's always some names that Dostoevsky sprinkles throughout all of his books. So once I learned that, I think when we were reading A Bad Business, now I just look for repeat names that I recognize from other books.
Yes.
That's probably much more successful than what Crypto does. He's telling me he couldn't keep Stepan's name right, so he gave him nicknames. So he calls Stepan Stroganoff right now, and I'm just
I love that.
Perfect.
Stroganoff.
I think we did that in the Voxer group for Crime and Punishment. A few people were doing that for characters too.
Yeah. One of the things to do is kind of like what you mentioned earlier, is you had that link for that free LibriVox recording. It can be useful to hear someone else repeat that name several times, and that way you can kind of internalize it a little bit if you're struggling. Is pretty useful, I think.
Yeah, I immersion read it during the sprint, and I think that helps me kind of the visual and the audio kind of make everything click. especially at the beginning.
Hi,
Or you
dear.
can just call him Stroganoff.
That won't be awkward on
I'm
live
never
shows at
gonna
all.
unhear that.
The worst
Yeah.
part is like I was kind of mad at first, but then I'm like, man, I'm hungry. I really want some stroganoff. right now."
Right? You just suddenly have random cravings for Stroganoff. You're like, why is this in my head?
Maybe you can have that in your demons video. You can just have a
Your
plate of
review.
stroganoff.
Yeah,
Just
well,
a
like,
big bowl of Stroganoff.
As we're talking about it, we're just sitting there ladling stroganoff.
I don't think like Crypto would, have a problem with that.
No, he wouldn't do the noodles. He's had like 3 carbs in the past 10 years. He
Oh,
wouldn't do
okay.
that.
I was like, is this another banana thing? But it's the carbs, not
It's the carbs. He's
Okay.
I
he's a
would buy
very carb-free temple man, if you will.
Or pre-temple.
like what he does is he'll go up to donuts and then just walks away. He won't eat them. He just smells them and then walks away.
That's
That's
an
okay.
incredible amount of
Right there.
self-restraint.
Grandmaster level restraint right there.
Mhm.
By the end, it's just like a big, like tub-sized filled with Stroganoff.
And you just can't
It
even.
can turn into a
that.
mukbang while you're
Leslie
talking.
has the deets.
Oh,
Well, she's gonna
Ellen
rat
more
it
has-
out.
carbs than he lets on.
Leslie tells all.
Have you guys ever heard of this author named? It's a Japanese author, but like Ryunosuke Akutagawa. He's written like a lot of like older Japanese short stories, but he's got this one called Yam Gruel, which is about just like this mush of yam gruel, and like he ends up like in this town where like the yams are like as big as buildings, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger, and like all these people's lives revolves around yam. Like I had that vision in my
That's
head just
amazing.
now.
Why does that
Only with
remind me of?
stroganoff.
It reminds me of Cloudy with a Chance of
Yeah,
Fall, like
exactly.
the picture book. Everything just gets bigger and bigger.
Oh yeah.
Cloudy with a chance of stroganoff.
The Una and Crypto story.
Gosh, I'm getting really hungry, and I just got done eating. Come on.
I feel like somebody needs to write this book now. That would be adorable.
Leslie needs to write it.
Yes.
When are we gonna get our first nerdy narrative like short fiction or something? That's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With their new fountain pens.
I feel like there would be a cool speculative twist if Leslie wrote it.
Yeah.
Definitely a horror element.
Yes.
So let me ask this:
Milo.
who are your guys' favorite characters so far that you've met in this book?
Well,
I think mine is just Stepan right now because I've really only met like 2 people.
yeah, same.
Yeah, it kind of starts out with just Stepan and Vivara mostly.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but he's cracking me up, so he may stay my favorite character.
For me, I got distracted with all of the book mentions. Like they talk about so many different books, and like I get distracted by those details because my brain is like, oh, books, and I forgot to pay attention to like what's actually happening. So I might have to go back and read the first.
Have you met the character that starts like his name starts with an L yet, Kate?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I just
I'm only
realized.
3% in.
I wonder if his name is a reference. Probably not. I'd have to look up to see what it kind of means in Russian. But his name was very close to like a Gulliver's Travels character or race name, I should say.
Oh,
But
okay.
probably just happenstance.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued about the friendship between Varvara and Stepan, because it seems like it's very tumultuous and possibly like they're very like addicted to their own friendship, but like it's like kind of an unhealthy and healthy friendship at the same time. It seems to be implied, but again, I'm not very far in.
Well, it's pretty insightful though.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a main character kind of person. I usually like the main character. Like I like Harry Potter. I know a lot of people think he's dumb, but I liked him. So I
I'm
think I like
almost always like a side character person. I always gravitate towards the side characters. And so I'm looking forward to some good. Dostoevsky always has great side characters that are like,
Oh yeah.
a lot of times they're like the humor that he sprinkles in amongst all of the melodrama.
I love the characters that like just mess everything up. Like everything's going to plan, and then like they come along. It could be the good guy that just messes things up. It could be the bad guy, but I love that character that just stirs, not necessarily the pot, but stirs the plot, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think that's what makes Dostoevsky interesting as well, because there's such a large cast of characters and the way they intermingle, it feels real, like real life, because real life is comprised of a large cast of characters and you have all kinds of personalities, and I feel like Dostoevsky represents that really well as far as just like realistic relationships between people and like the idiosyncrasies of unique personalities.
Does anybody know how he wrote it? Like he serialized a lot in the past when we talk about Crime and Punishment and these other ones. Was this one released the same way where it was serialized, or did he write a whole bunch and come back later? Like, I know that was a big thing for like The Idiot, was like he was always against the deadline to release each part, right? And that might impact one's ability to say, here's how I want this to play out. This one seems very constructed. Like it seems like he definitely had a vision, a goal, where he was going to move forward. Do we have any idea how he published or how it came about?
That's a good question.
This says The Possessed 1871 to 1872, so I think it was serialized.
Yeah, it was published in a journal, The Russian Messenger.
I wonder like how far ahead he was in like his mind or the plot or where he was going, because it seemed like The Idiot, he was like almost struggling to keep up with his deadlines. Father Zosima? Who doesn't love Father Zosima?
Oh my gosh, when I read Brothers K, I listened to that. First, I tried to read it like in physical format because I had a giant edition of it and I couldn't keep track of everything that was going on. So then I started doing an immersion read, and then I fell in love with the audiobook so much that I just listened to the audiobook because it was like a Russian soap opera going on in my head.
Yeah, I remember that. You were, because I remember like you were always updating us in the chat, like your progress. And then like as soon as you started the audiobook, it was like, boom, like you started going a lot faster.
I just got my popcorn and watched the updates.
Yeah.
But I think she was asking about the father of the brothers.
Oh, like Fyodor.
Yeah.
That was his name, right? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
God, I love that guy.
Oh my God.
I know people hated him,
So
but
meddling.
he was hysterical. And he was like so like egoist and self-interested, and didn't look after his sons. He was great. I like that guy.
You need those spicy characters.
I love spicy characters. Those are my favorite. Like
They add so much to the plot.
Yeah, like people are always shocked when they like if you ever like talk to someone about East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Like there's this one character that's basically the devil. And I'm like, I love that character. Like she causes so much pandemonium. Like it's great.
Yeah. Or those like love to hate characters. It's so great to just hate on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This has been adapted into a lot of different things.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. A couple
Like
different plays, some BBC miniseries,
Ooh.
and a
We're all
Russian
right.
miniseries and postmodern film.
Stephanie. So excited.
Because we were talking about North and South in the chat a while back, and it got confusing because you guys thought I was talking about an adaptation of The Possessed. And then we were like, I don't know if there is one. And now it's like, yes, there is.
Stephanie's mind is torn.
Yes.
Watch party.
I have a feeling that Stepan is going to be kind of a controversial guy. So I think he's going to be kind of hard to love, but like fun to watch. That's just that's the impression I'm getting.
Una, I just saw your T-shirt, and I love it.
My wife got us all, our whole family, matching Thanksgiving shirts, so we all had different shirts to wear. Christmas wasn't enough, so now we have to start doing matching Thanksgiving. We do matching Halloween outfits. Like, I'm pretty sure at some point in our lives, like every day of the year, we'll probably have some matching outfits. That's where we're headed.
You know, the thing you do for family.
I think you guys will be a trendsetter because you don't normally see that for Thanksgiving. Like the matching Christmas pajamas. Like every family has that. Next year, everyone's going to have matching Thanksgiving shirts because of you. You're a trendsetter.
I love it.
Gotta stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
If that's my mark on the world, I apologize.
You could have worse marks. I'm just saying.
Yeah. You'll be known for Russian lit and matching Thanksgiving outfits.
It's a great combo. Dostoevsky
And
would be
giant
proud.
bowls of stroganoff.
It's a good legacy.
Yeah. The giant bowl of stroganoff.
Oh my goodness.
Matching outfits is how you know they care. Well, shall we read again?
Probably.
I'm all in. Let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to go for another 30?
That sounds good.
Yes.
Until like 45-ish?
That works.
Okay. So
Made it to 5%.
awesome.
And there was a line in here. It's not a spoiler. It just says he was quoting lines. And it says, "The peasant with his axe is coming. Something terrible will happen." And it's like, ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And some of these descriptions of people are cracking me up.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like, she had a face like a horse, and it's like, ouch.
That's a classic. I see that one more often than I would expect.
Yeah.
But it always reminds me of Henry VIII. Because that's what he said of Anne of Cleves. Because he was given, like, before he met her, he was given, like, a portrait, a little miniature portrait that was painted of her. But the artist that painted her apparently painted her a lot more beautiful than Henry thought she looked like in real life. So once he met her in real life, when the marriage was set to go and everything, he's like, she looks like a horse. And
Ouch.
yeah.
Seriously.
I don't know if that's where it originated from or not, but that's what it always makes me think of.
Yeah.
Imagine if somebody insulted you and it lived on for thousands of years.
Oh,
Like,
what a
way
legacy.
to be.
So I'm on part 8 of chapter 1,
That's terrible.
and I'm loving all the descriptions of all the people
Yeah.
in Stepan's circle. Just the different people. Like, there's Liputin and Shatov and someone else that I just got to. But it's talking about, like, Shatov's ideals, and it talks like how he can be, like, there are people who can be so suddenly struck by a strong idea that it seems to crush them then and there, sometimes even forever. They're never strong enough to master it, but they're passionate believers. And I'm like, yeah, like the
we know those people.
yes.
Or letting someone go for being a free thinker.
Yes.
It's like, wow.
Or that they'd take over Varvara's, like, newspaper. They're like, you can start it and then we'll just take it for you. Isn't that so nice of us? We'll give you 1/6 of the capital.
Yeah. And then right after that page of that quote you just said, there's that quote where they say they got everything out of books. And even at the first rumor from our progressive corners in the capital, were prepared to throw anything whatsoever out the window, provided they were advised to throw it out.
Yes.
The quote that I wrote down was from much earlier in the book than that. I'm still at 3%. But it says, of late years, his grief had begun to be not only patriotic, but at times alcoholic too. And I'm like, that is like, Dostoevsky has a way of writing things that sound complicated, but you know exactly what he's talking about at the same time. And for some reason, whenever I'm reading Dostoevsky or really any classic book, quotes about grief always stand out to me. I don't know what that says about me or my life, but I'm always like, oh, grief, let me write this down. I will say I got distracted during this sprint because we learned this morning that Alan at the Library of Alexandria was in a car accident on his way to a wedding, and he has several broken ribs and a fractured pelvis, I think. Wow. And so they've started a GoFundMe fundraiser for him on his Discord. He's doing okay now. He was in a car with 3 people. One person was already discharged, and the other person before we went live was still in ICU. They think a car T-boned them, and they hit on the side that Alan was sitting on. They think that the car was running away from the cops. And so Christina was just updating us on Discord about how he's doing. And so there's a GoFundMe account for him, and they're getting together a video of well wishes from people that are close to him. But just wanted to send out our love to Christina and Alan.
Yeah.
Was Christina in the car as well?
She wasn't, but she's at the hospital with him now.
Is
I
he?
guess there's like 3 people.
Sprinting?
Yeah, he has. No, that's Evie. Evie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And doing his reading.
I was like so confused.
I mean, I
Okay.
wouldn't put it past Alan, but
Yeah. He's probably like, I still have to get work done.
But yeah, what's really cool is they've already passed their goal, which is really
Oh,
nice.
that's awesome.
right, like a 5,000 goal, and they created this like an hour or 2 ago, and it's already past the goal because the BookTube community is just so amazing.
Yes.
But back to demons. Yeah, I don't know. Every time I read Dostoevsky, I think I'm going to be completely overwhelmed by his writing style. And then I read it and I'm like, no, I know it. He has a way of writing in like what seems like it should be complicated prose, but you know exactly what he's getting at, what he's portraying in his writing. And I don't know why, but I'm always amazed that I can follow along his books. I always think like, okay, this one is going to go way over my head. But then I'm reading it and I'm like, no, this is completely approachable. And I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have of Dostoevsky and Russian lit in general, that they think it's, completely so complicated that they won't be able to follow it. And there's so many different characters, you can't follow them. But at least with Dostoevsky, he has a way of writing that the plot's easy to follow. And he, writes characters in a way that, even though there's so many different characters, who's speaking to who at what time, because they all have their different mannerisms and they don't get lost like some other books with a huge cast of characters, at least for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say this book is definitely grabbing me right away, and I'm excited about that because I was a little bit intimidated by this one, but now I'm feeling like, okay, I think this is doable. Like, stick with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this
What
one.
was intimidating you when you said you were intimidated about it?
Just that I had read and heard that this one was more like politically charged as far as like the background knowledge that you might need going into it, which is like I don't feel like I have a great grasp on Russian politics generally, but I felt that way about his other works too, like always a little bit of apprehension going in, just because like Russia is not my it's not my wheelhouse per se, but I've always enjoyed the experience of a Dostoevsky book. So this was just this one in particular, like the characters and like the complexity already of the characters is like it doesn't feel over my head. Like I always have it built up in my mind that
Right.
Dostoevsky is going to be challenging, kind of like Kate was saying. Yeah, it feels more accessible than I was expecting. So
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
That's how I felt about Crime and Punishment, because I put it off for years thinking it would be really challenging. And then I was really surprised by the readability of it. And I think this one's kind of the same way.
Mhm.
And even if you don't fully, grasp it yet, it's just hilarious.
I think also for me, like, there's always some kind of larger discussion with Dostoevsky, which, like, initially intimidates me. Like, I don't know any of the history behind this. I don't know Russian history. I don't know the politics or the philosophy going on. And so I feel like I'm going to be overwhelmed, but then Dostoevsky has a way of bringing in real life examples into his discussions with his characters to make it so, like, there's no question of understanding it. I don't know. He just has a way of writing it. So I always think that I'm not going to be able to follow it. But then I get submerged into the actual story. I think it's because he weaves in the discussions with the plot of the story and the characters so well that half the time I don't even realize that I'm caught up in this philosophical or political discussion until I think back on it and I'm like, wow, I just made it through that whole discussion and I knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's pretty good at carrying us through those sections, I always feel like.
Then he'll always like kind of like have that periodic statement at the end, like those quotes that Tiffany had brought up earlier and such. Like it's just like, oh, so he's talking about the youth, how they get so excited and have all this energy and get carried away with ideas. And, like you even see kind of a little bit about how Vivara and Stepan, it's like, where are their kids? Like, who's giving the kids advice? Like, like they have all this energy and all this youth. Like, where is the guidance? And like you kind of get the idea that like, oh, he's kind of talking about like, where's Russia going? What's the future of Russia? Like, oh, okay. And I'm like, thanks, Dostoevsky. I didn't even notice that. Thanks for putting that out. It's pretty nice of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really expresses like what's going on in Russian intellectual circles in a way that I don't feel like there's another really good way to understand that, like in an accessible way. I feel like his books are like a lifeline like that for me.
Yeah.
They really plant you in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know a lot of people talk about how this one was apparently very prophetic with what happened to Russia with like the Decembrist revolution and such, that it would be interesting to see like how does he carry me there, like obviously he doesn't know what's going to happen, like this is written well in advance, but apparently he kind of knows about what's happening. It kind of reminded me a little bit about, I don't know if any of you all read War and Peace, but that's another good book that kind of says where was Russia headed, like Europe is kind of ahead with this intellectual thought, and you can see how it influenced Russian thought. Like Russia and Europe are so heavily interconnected that it's kind of interesting to see where will Dostoevsky take us and what did he predict exactly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where this book takes us.
Have any of you ever read like a book specifically on like the Decembrist Revolution? It's always like,
I don't know anything about it.
It's like a little chapter usually. It'd be nice to read like a whole book just on that. Would be interesting to kind of like layer with this.
Was Fireborn, Tiffany, do you remember, was that related to the Decembrist Revolution, or was that a different one?
It might have been the Decembrist one. I'm trying to remember because I knew it was like a Russian Revolution thing. But
I remember that. Didn't you guys read that with Leslie too?
Yes, we did.
I remember you guys talking about that.
I do think it's interesting. He keeps referencing like different political thoughts and stuff. And Christy and I earlier this year read The Sinner and the Saint by Kevin Birmingham, which was supposed to be about Dostoevsky's like thought process in reading or writing Crime and Punishment, some of which we agreed with and some of which we didn't. But some of those are some of the things, the thought processes that he's mentioning here were mentioned in that book. So it's interesting to see the parallels there, and also the parallels between I wouldn't say that Stepan is exactly like Dostoevsky, but I think it's interesting how it talks about how he has like no money and Varvara is basically like his patroness and he's getting money from her and he's calling these people saying, I need the next installment of this money, even though someone else already like paid in advance. And Dostoevsky did that all the time. So it's interesting to see kind of some of the parallels of thought and his own life being mirrored just a little bit in what he's writing.
It's gonna be like so hard as an author to like draw influences and like how do you write characters? Because people talk about like, oh, these characters were so real, like they're like real living people. But it's like it's kind of like when you have a dream, like those conversations you had is you having a conversation with yourself. It's not the real person. You're projecting what you think that other person is. And it's the same thing with writing, right? Dostoevsky sits in a room and tries to create all these different characters, but they're all him in a sense. They're all projections, and he'll take influences from his life, people that he knows, movements, and he'll like sprinkle that on top of the characters, but they're all him. It's all his mind. So it's like inevitable that you're going to see these influences like that you kind of have to take from real life because otherwise everything would just come out the same almost.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It makes sense that if someone you're writing their deep innermost thoughts, it would reflect your own deep innermost thoughts because that's the one you know the most and most intimately.
Well, and I always think like, wow, these people seem so real.
The bots have shown up.
That's not Peter.
But at the same time, Dostoevsky's a human just like any of us. He comes across other people, regular people, just like us. So, of course, his characters are going to seem real because, especially back when he was writing, all he had to reference are other people, other real people. So, it's like one of those things. It's just like feeling like I'm going to be overwhelmed and surprising that I'm not. I always am surprised at how real his characters are. And then I have to remind myself, like, it wasn't like today where we have all these fantasy books and, these fantasy shows and stuff to imagine, imaginary people. He had, real people. He had imagination, of course, an amazing imagination, but you have to base these characters off of someone.
This is so evil to say, but it's like, remember when we read The House of the Dead? I really think his time in prison, seeing the worst of the worst, people confessing their biggest sins, their biggest desires, their souls to him, I think it just awakened something inside of him. That whole experience allowed him to somewhat grasp and see deeper into a lot of different parts of humanity that he hadn't before, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was able to find redeeming qualities even in the worst kind of people. So that really, like you said, it kind of opened his eyes to how people really are.
Right.
Good old Pushkin. Honor of the Russian soul right there.
So speaking of Pushkin, I don't know if anyone else's versions are like this, but before part 1 starts in my book, there is a quote from a Pushkin poem called Demons, which I have not read. So I thought that was interesting. And also a passage from Luke about Jesus driving out demons from a man and driving them into a pig. So
was that the Legion story?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if he's going this direction, but it's in the realm of discussion of, did he view all this youth energy, like this nihilistic, materialistic revolutionaryism coming up, like did he view that as demons coming to take over, Russia's soul, like Russia's belief in Christianity? Like I don't know if that's where he's going, but it feels kind of like he likens it to people being possessed with these ideas, these dangerous thoughts that could harm others.
That's interesting.
That was my thought when I saw the Luke reference as well.
Oh, there you go. I want to do that one next year. Notes from the Underground.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one yet.
It's short. It's philosophical. Christy told me to do it, and I was like, well, maybe if I audiobook it, and then when I don't understand it and I read it again, like that'll be cool. So like that's what I did. the audiobook, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to go through this one a little bit slower.
I've heard it's very fever dream like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's really just like
Super
in
tiny.
someone's brain who's like not doing well.
Yeah. It's funny.
Interesting.
It's funny you use the term fever brain. There
Yeah.
may or may not be a fever brain in this novel. You never know.
It wouldn't
I mean,
surprise me.
there's
Wouldn't be the
definitely
first
a
time.
little bit.
They all have that, don't they? All of his protagonists have these like feverish dreams, and then it's
Yeah.
like, what does this mean? What is this
Yeah.
saying about me?
Yeah.
Raskolnikov, is that you?
Yeah,
True.
the entire book kind of like that. But even like Yvonne from his dream of the devil or whatever at the end of Brothers K was so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. That's the ultimate fever dream. Anytime someone says fever dream, that's where my brain immediately
Yeah,
goes.
I mean, there were parts of Brothers K that in itself felt like a fever dream.
I love that book.
It's a good one. I haven't read that in so long.
Yeah, I need to reread it. That's such a good one.
You had Dia on here. You might have seen her in the chat. She's doing Brothers K right now, and I'm kind of like following along, like listening to her thoughts. I'm just like, oh, I love this book so much. Tell me about it all day long.
Oh
Yeah, she's Sandy from
Yeah.
Miss Reads a Lot. That's her book club pick for
Mhm.
December. So
Yes, I'm like, gush over it more, people. Tell me more. I love it.
yes.
I really want to reread that. Maybe we can do that again once we get through all his works.
Just keep
It'll be a while.
recycling Dostoevsky.
I feel like it's so easy to do like his greatest hits right now. Like that's kind of like what we're doing.
Right.
I've never read them, but like I hear a lot of like not as excited words about like his earlier stuff in terms of like the injured and insulted, poor folk, stuff like that. Like I wonder if I'll read that and just be like, I'm gonna go back to these other ones. I don't know what'll happen, but
Well, didn't
I
he write
think
those
he-
before he went to Siberia? So his entire
Mhm.
like life philosophy changed
right.
once he went there. And so how he wrote and how he approached life was so different that I think that is part of where the criticism stems from, is that it's like a different person writing. Like that was the divide in his life where he wasn't the
Mhm.
same.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a
Absolutely.
lot of people, at least I know he was really involved with Belinsky in his early writing days, who was a Russian critic. And Belinsky really loved poor folk in some of his first stuff that he wrote because it was very sympathetic to the lower classes. But then when he wanted to really break out of the mold of just being sympathetic and write different stuff, he got a lot of hate for that. And also when he wrote more like fantastical stories, that was not in vogue at the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess it depends on your perspective when you're reading them, maybe whether you like it or not.
Are you trying to read the Frank biography section, at least on demons, at the same time, or are you going to go back afterwards, or what's your plan?
I'm definitely planning to read that probably a couple times during the course of reading this novel. I don't mind spoilers too much about it. So honestly, if I'm spoiled, I'll probably understand the book a little bit better.
I feel that way often about classics. It's like, you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we read, what was it, last year that we read Notes from a Dead House?
Yeah.
And he wrote about his time in prison after that, and that was like more like a fictionalized memoir. He
Mhm.
kind of took notes while he was in prison of the different people he met in there, and then once he got out, he wrote the novel format of it. But it was really eye-opening to read that and see the different characters that he met along the way, and yeah, I enjoyed that read a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think his stuff is good too, because some of them, like the Brothers K, I read them so far apart. And so you come at it from a different perspective, and then you get something completely different out of it, which is such a good reading experience.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
remember.
there's so much packed into his books that you can read it many times and get something different out of each read.
It's like the most minor of like there's so many minor moments in those books that can like matter, but there's this one little boy in there that like he gets scolded and he's just like, you're just repeating someone else's words. Those aren't your words. Those aren't your thoughts, right? And I feel so much of that in this book too, like where they're looking at these people that are just so excited, like getting swept up with the idea of these movements, being a part of something. It's at some point it's no longer about the idea and it's about belonging. Right, like everybody else is doing this, so I'm going to go join in too. It becomes kind of like this currency in a sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm up for one more sprint if you guys are.
I'm actually gonna have to head out.
Okay.
But I enjoyed sprinting with you guys. It's always a blast.
Well, this will give us time to stay ahead because otherwise, one more sprint and you'd probably finish the book or something.
Probably.
Oh my god.
All right. Bye, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You want to go till 45 again?
Sure.
Okay.
What time? 35? 35?
45.
45. Okay.
Right before the
I'll
hour.
hang in as long as I can, but if
Yeah.
I disappear, it's because I have mom duties.
Absolutely.
But I'll hang in for a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Una had to drop, but Christy and Tiffany are still hanging in there.
And then there were 3.
Yes.
I got through. I was working on the same chapter for the first 2 sprints because it had been so long since I really got into it and read it. But I'm finally actually into chapter 2 now.
Awesome.
And it's really, really good. I'm really loving it.
I hit chapter 2 as well. What part are you in of chapter 2, Christy?
It's the part. It's been describing Varvara's son, and currently I just got to the part where it said Varvara. It is said in town that Varvara is governing the province, but that was said sarcastically.
The son is quite interesting. Here's where the drama is really ramping up.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, everyone's in chapter 2. I'm still back in chapter 1, but I'm enjoying what I'm reading. So he made me laugh because there was one part where I forget the character's name now. Not Varva, but the other guy, Stefan. He was like, I'm gonna write this book. I'm ready to write this book. I don't know what's happening, why it's not getting written, but I'm gonna write it. It's definitely not his fault. I was like, that's complete writer's block right there, where you're just so ready to do something and it doesn't happen. You're like, I don't know why it didn't happen, but I was ready for it.
Yes. He wants so badly to be important.
He does. He does. Oh yeah, he really is. Nikolai, he's something else. When you get to that Kate, top tier Dostoevsky drama. Let me just tell you, top tier.
I love it.
Yes.
55, nice.
Yay!
10%.
That's amazing.
Oh, that is.
I have 23 apparently. But maybe I will have that many when I get to where you are. Because you're like twice as far as I am.
I was cracking up at the part where it's talking about the party and they like let the postal clerk come who played the piano. And it said that in between him playing, he did mimicries of a pig, a thunderstorm, a mother giving birth with the first cry of a baby, and so on and so forth. That was the sole reason for inviting him. What a party. What a party. Not quite as bad as the bear scene in War and Peace, if you guys have read that.
Yes.
Quite a party. You tie a bear to a police officer and throw them in the river. It's quite a party. Oh, man.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yay.
I'm
People
enjoying
don't
it
think
so much.
Dostoevsky is a humorous writer, but he's got the humor there.
I think it's like so necessary if you're writing about really heavy stuff that's not easy to understand. You have to also be entertaining to pull the common person through your book.
The balance is so important for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think like a lot of people don't, if they don't find Dostoevsky funny, it's because they don't get his sense of humor.
Yeah.
He has a certain particular sense of humor. And if you don't get it, then it's not there. But if you get it, then it makes his books 10 times more enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
I think people too can be offended by what he's saying because he says it very loudly.
Yeah.
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 That's not so different than authors nowadays, though.
Right.
A lot of them are not exactly subtle.
Yes. Very true. As long as you have a diet of people that you're reading from,
Yeah, it's more well-rounded.
Yeah. If all you read is just one sort, then you're going to be kind of lopsided as a person.
That's true. I think it's funny because I feel like every single one of Dostoevsky's books, like part 1 is usually like really drama filled and really funny. And then part 2 hits like this philosophical wall. And then if you push through that, like then you get it and everything clicks and it all comes together. But I feel like a lot of times tonally, part 2 can sometimes be different than part 1.
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience so far with like the 3 major Dostoevsky novels I've read.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's true.
Sometimes both sides, Matt. Sometimes every side.
Yes.
I feel like most of the time Dostoevsky doesn't really pick one side or the other. His point is that, you know, we're all humans and we all have our flaws that you can mock, and we all have good parts to us. And so why pick a side when you can mock both sides?
That's top tier comedy, you know?
Right?
He sees folly everywhere and he sure points it out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's true, like still nowadays, like in every viewpoint, every political thing, whatever, like there's always hypocrisy in both sides, and there's always really genuine people in both sides. So
I think that's why he can still be entertaining and also instructive at the same time for a wide variety of peoples, because
definitely,
even though he says what he's saying, you know, he's not a lopsided person as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and he dives so deep into like the human psyche and human nature that what he writes about is still super relevant, because even if the world has changed in some ways, people really haven't.
Yes. Yeah. That is so true. I'm so glad you guys are loving it.
Yes.
And Victoria too.
Yeah.
I was like nervous what Victoria would think.
It's a hit already.
Yes.
And we're not even that far into it.
Right.
Yes.
It's a good sign.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, of course. And thank you everyone out there who joined us today. We'll be having reading sprints at least once a month, going through this read along to kind of help keep momentum going. And we just love reading with each other anyways. So
yeah.
We'll have more information coming up on when the next sprints are. And I think Tiffany's going to be hosting a live show about halfway through the read along, and then one at the end to wrap it up.
And we'll announce those dates as we get closer to.
Yes.
So we look forward to seeing all of your thoughts in the Discord as you read along. Thank you guys for joining. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.